Rank 1. The serf. You were born into this. That's the first thing to understand. You did not choose this life the way a man might choose a trade or a town. You were born on this land, to parents who were born on this land, and the land belongs to a lord whose name you know, but whose face you may have seen only once or twice from a distance. You are not a slave. That is the distinction your world makes, and it matters to the people who make it. You cannot be bought or sold, but you cannot leave. The land you work is not yours, and the Lord above you can demand your labor, your crops, your sons for his wars, and your daughters for whatever arrangements suit him. You wake before the sun, not because someone tells you to, because the work requires it, and the work is never finished. You grow wheat, mostly. Some vegetables in a strip of garden behind the house. You keep a pig, if you're fortunate. Chickens, if you're more fortunate than that. Your diet is bread and pottage, a thick stew of whatever is available, eaten from a wooden bowl that you own along with approximately 6 other things. Your house is one room, wattle and daub walls, a thatched roof that leaks when it rains, a fire in the center with a hole above it that removes roughly half the smoke. You sleep on straw. Your animals sleep near you in winter for the warmth. You pay rent and labor. 3 days a week, sometimes more at harvest, you work the Lord's fields instead of your own. This is called the corvée, and it is non-negotiable. If your own crops fail because you were working his, that is your problem. You will still owe him next year. You pay taxes in grain. A portion of everything you grow goes up the hierarchy. To the Lord. To the church, the tithe, 10%, which the priest reminds you is owed to God and collected by him. What remains is what your family eats. In a bad year, what remains is not enough. You have no recourse, no court that hears your complaint. No language for rights, because the concept, as you might imagine it, does not exist for someone in your position. The Lord's word is law on his land, and you are of his land. You will die within a few miles of where you were born. Your children will live this same life. Their children will too. This is not tragedy in your world. It simply is. You know no other shape for a life. You pray. The church gives the year its rhythm. Saints' days, feast days, the great holidays that briefly suspend the work and allow something that functions like joy. You believe in heaven with the totality that people believe in things they need to be true. You are the base of everything. Every castle, every cathedral, every war, every feast, and every great hall above you. All of it rests on the fact that you and people like you grow the food that makes it possible. Nobody will record your name. History does not keep it. You existed anyway. Rank 2. The freeman. You own your labor. That is the difference, and it is enormous. You may have bought your freedom from a lord, or been granted it, or simply been born to a father who had it. However it happened, you are not bound to land. You can leave. You can negotiate. You can, within the limits of a world that has many limits, choose. You are a craftsman, perhaps, a blacksmith, a carpenter, a tanner, a miller. You have a skill that took years to learn, and that produces things people need. You trade in the local market. You have customers. You have a reputation, which is a form of property in this world and one of the most valuable kinds. Or you are a yeoman farmer, a free peasant who rents land rather than being tied to it, who pays in coin rather than in obligated days, who decides what to plant and keeps more of what he grows. Either way, you have something the serf does not. Negotiating power. Not much, but some. You live better. Your house has more than one room, possibly. Your diet includes meat with some regularity. You own tools, furniture, perhaps a horse. Your children can be apprenticed into trades. The future is not simply a repetition of the present. It can, with luck and work, be improved. You participate in the local economy in ways the serf cannot. You attend market days and pay for things with coin and make decisions that are actually decisions. You have standing in the village. Your opinion is sought. Your disputes are heard by a local court that has at least the framework of fairness, even if the practice falls short. You owe military service in times of war, called up by the Lord above you, and you go armed with whatever you own. You are not a soldier by profession, but you have had to be one on occasion. Men you knew did not come back. You are not powerful. A bad harvest, a fire, a legal dispute with someone above you in the hierarchy. Any of these can undo what you've built faster than you built it. There is no safety net beneath you. Below you is the serf's life, and you are aware of that drop constantly. But you are free. In a world where most people are not, that word carries a weight we have mostly forgotten. Rank 3. The merchant. You live in a town which already puts you in a different world. Towns are a new thing in the medieval order, or rather they are growing in a way that the old feudal structure wasn't designed for. The hierarchy of lord and serf and land makes a certain sense in the countryside. In a town of 10,000 people buying and selling and producing and competing, it fits less cleanly. That gap is where you exist. You trade cloth, spices, wool, metal, grain, whatever moves between places and commands a price differential you can harvest. You buy low, you sell high. You understand supply and demand before those words exist for the concept. You are not noble. The nobility makes this clear in ways large and small. You cannot carry a sword legally in most jurisdictions. You cannot own certain types of land. At court, you stand at the back of rooms that men of lesser actual wealth but higher birth stand at the front of. The social humiliation is routine and you have learned to metabolize it. But you have money. And money, in a world that is slowly learning what money can do, is beginning to matter in ways that birth alone once decided everything. You lend to lords. This is the thing nobody talks about openly, but everyone understands. The noble above you needs funds for wars, for building, for maintaining a status that his agricultural income no longer fully supports. You provide those funds. You charge interest, carefully because the church calls it usury and has opinions, but creatively because you are a merchant, and creative accounting is a survival skill. A lord who owes you money is a lord who treats you with a certain careful respect that has nothing to do with your rank and everything to do with his debt. You join a guild or found one. The guild sets prices, controls quality, regulates who can practice your trade in this town. It is a monopoly by another name, and you are either inside it or fighting to get in. Once inside, you protect it with the same ferocity the nobility protects its bloodlines. You dress well, better than your rank technically permits in some jurisdictions. Sumptuary laws exist to keep merchants from looking like nobles, and are violated constantly by merchants who can afford to pay the fines. Your house in the town is substantial, stone possibly when others build in timber. Your wife wears silk. You are building something. Not just wealth, but a family position. Your son, if you educate him and he is clever, could become a lawyer or a churchman and enter rooms that are closed to you. Your daughter, married well, could connect your family to a minor noble house. The hierarchy is rigid, but you are learning that money is a solvent. Rank 4, the knight. You are the lowest rung of the nobility and the most visible face of it. You were trained for this since childhood. At 7, you left your family home to serve in the household of a lord as a page, fetching, carrying, learning. At 14, you became a squire, attending a knight, caring for his horse and armor, watching combat up close, beginning to train for it yourself. At 21, or whenever your lord judged you ready, you were knighted. The ceremony matters. The tap of the sword on your shoulder. The word spoken over you. The moment when you crossed from one category of person into another. You felt it as a physical change, because in every practical sense it was. You own a horse. A war horse, a destrier, is one of the most expensive objects in this world. You own armor, which is another. You own weapons. The kit that makes you a knight costs more than most people will earn in their lifetimes. You have a small manor, perhaps, or an income from a lord in exchange for military service. You are equipped and obligated. Your obligation is war. When your lord calls his banners, you answer. You ride in armor that makes you nearly impervious to the weapons of common soldiers and nearly impossible to dismount. In the medieval military calculus, you are the tank. One knight is worth dozens of infantrymen in direct combat, or so the theory runs. In practice, war is chaos and mud and dysentery, and men dying of infections weeks after the battle ended. The chivalric ideal, the courtly knight fighting cleanly for honor and his lady, is a story told by poets who were not there. The reality is a siege that lasts 4 months and accomplishes nothing, or a cavalry charge that breaks on a line of stakes and suddenly the horse is dead and the armor that protected you is pinning you to the ground. You have a code, chivalry. It is real in the sense that you believe in it, and complicated in the sense that it applies primarily to how you treat other knights. Prisoners of noble rank are ransomed, captured, held, exchanged for money. Commoners in the same battle are afforded no such consideration. The code is for your class, not for everyone. You hold tournaments in peacetime. They are practice, spectacle, and the most entertaining thing in this world all at once. You compete for prizes and reputation. A skilled tournament knight can make a career of it, moving from competition to competition, accumulating ransom money and renown. William Marshall, the greatest knight of his age, built a legend and a fortune on tournament circuit victories before he ever held political power. You are at the bottom of the nobility. Every baron and earl and duke above you makes that clear. But you are above everyone below you, and you feel that too. The horse helps with the feeling. Rank 5, the Baron. You have land, real land, not a manor, zahav wen, a barony. Multiple manors, multiple villages, multiple thousands of people who live within your authority and owe you their military service, their taxes, and their legal obedience. You hold this land from the king, technically. Everything in the feudal structure is technically held from someone above, but in practice, on your land, you are the law. Your castle is the seat of justice. Your court hears disputes. Your word ends arguments that have no other ending. Your castle is also your home, your fortress, your administrative center, and your statement. Stone walls 60 feet high, towers at the corners, a great hall where you feast your knights and receive your vassals and demonstrate physically and continuously that you are a person of consequence. The castle costs a fortune to build and a fortune to maintain, and it is worth every coin because presence and power are the same thing at your level. You manage an economy. The revenues from your estates flow up to you, rents, taxes, fees from your courts, income from your mills and fisheries and forests. You pay out to your knights, your household, your garrison, the constant maintenance of your properties. The administration of a barony is a full-time occupation, and most barons have a team of clerics and stewards handling the mechanics while they handle the politics. The politics is the job. You navigate relationships with the barons around you, alliances, marriages between your children and theirs, disputes over boundaries that could become wars if handled badly, and often do. You navigate your relationship with the king above you, which requires constant calibration. Too loyal and you are useful but disposable. Too independent and you are a problem to be solved. The correct position is somewhere in between and it shifts constantly. You attend the king's court. This is not optional or not fully optional. Presence at court is how you stay in the conversation. The men who stay home managing their estates efficiently while others are at court find that decisions get made without them, that their interests go unrepresented, that the king's favor flows to faces he recognizes. You may be summoned to war. You bring your knights, however many your barony can field. This is your military obligation to the king, and it is the price of everything you have. You have enemies. This is inevitable. Land generates disputes. Disputes generate grievances. Grievances can metastasize into feuds that outlast the original parties by generations. You know which neighboring barons you trust and which you don't, and you know not to turn your back at the wrong moment. Your marriage was arranged. Your children's marriages will be too. Love is a thing that happens or doesn't within whatever framework politics created. Some men are lucky, others make their peace. You have more power than you could have imagined as a boy watching your father manage his smaller estate. It is not enough. It is never enough. The earl above you has more. You are aware of this every day. Rank 6. The earl or count. You are a magnate now. That word means something specific in this world. You are not merely powerful on your own land. You are a political force in the kingdom. Your decisions affect things beyond your borders. The king knows your name and thinks about you, which is a form of power and also, always, a form of danger. You control a region. An earldom is not one estate or one castle, but a collection of territories, a portfolio of power across a swathe of the kingdom. You have vassals of your own, barons who hold their land from you the way you hold yours from the king. You are a lord of lords. The hierarchy bends in both directions from where you stand. Your household is a small court. Knights, clerics, administrators, servants, entertainers, advisors. Hundreds of people whose lives depend on your continued prosperity and political survival. Managing them is a skill distinct from everything else. Patronage, loyalty, knowing who is ambitious and useful versus ambitious and dangerous. You have sat in council with the king. This is where the kingdom is actually governed, in rooms where a handful of great lords argue and negotiate and occasionally threaten each other with enough restraint to keep the arguments from becoming rebellions. You are one of those lords. Your voice shapes policy. Your support or opposition can determine whether a campaign happens, whether a law passes, whether the king's proposal survives the room. This proximity to the king is the most valuable and most volatile thing about your position. Favor given can be revoked. A king who needs you today may fear you tomorrow if you become too successful. The history of men at your level is written in the gap between royal favor and royal suspicion, and the crossing from one to the other can happen faster than anyone is ever ready for. You think constantly about succession, not yours, the king's. When a king dies or is deposed, the world reorders itself. The men who backed the right claimant rise. The men who backed the wrong one lose everything, land, title, sometimes their heads. Reading the political situation correctly is not just a matter of ambition, it is a matter of survival. You have been part of a rebellion, possibly, or resisted one, or navigated one carefully enough to emerge on the right side without committing fully until the outcome was clear enough. This kind of calculation defines the lives of men at your level. History calls it treachery or loyalty depending on who won. You sleep in the largest bed in a castle that is one of several you own. It is not comfortable, exactly. Power at this level never is, but it is yours. Rank 7, the Duke. There are not many of you. A kingdom might have a handful of dukes. The rank exists at the extreme upper end of the nobility below the royal family, a designation for men controlling vast territories, commanding enormous military power, wielding political influence that makes even the king careful about how he speaks to you. Your territory is not a collection of manors. It is a region with its own identity, its own traditions, its own people who think of themselves as your subjects in a way that runs parallel to their identity as subjects of the crown. A Duke of Normandy, of Burgundy, of Lancaster. These are not titles. They are descriptions of a power structure. You do not attend the king's court. You receive ambassadors. The distinction is significant. Your military capacity is such that the king cannot simply summon you to war the way he summons a baron. He negotiates with you. He needs your forces and you know it, and he knows you know it. The conversation happens between parties who both understand the real balance of power, dressed in the language of feudal obligation, because that is the vocabulary the world provides. You have made kings, or participated in the making of them. At your level, succession crises are not distant political events. They are opportunities or threats that you must navigate with everything you have. The Plantagenets, the Wars of the Roses, Poisonast, the great French magnates circling weak capuchin kings. The men who shaped those events were men at your level, making calculations about which way history was falling and how to land on top of it. Some of them were right, some were not. The ones who were not are in chronicles described briefly, their titles redistributed, their lines ending. You think about your legacy, not in an abstract way, in the very concrete way of a man who has built something enormous and knows how quickly enormous things can be unmade. You establish monasteries and endow churches, partly from genuine faith, partly because the church keeps records, and the records tell the story of your family's greatness for centuries after you are gone. You have more than you could use. You want more anyway. This is not greed in the ordinary sense. It is the logic of a world where power is always relative, and the distance between you and the man below you must be maintained or you become him. Rank 8, the King. The crown is yours, not because you are better, not because God specifically chose you, though the ceremony says otherwise, and you may have come to believe it after enough coronations and enough people treating you as though it's true. You are king because your father was king, or because you took it from someone whose father was king, or because enough powerful men decided you were the least bad option in a moment of crisis. The throne is both the most powerful and the most precarious position in the kingdom. You are the source of all law and all legitimacy. Every title below you flows from you. Every court derives its authority from yours. Every lord in the kingdom is, technically, your vassal. The entire feudal structure points upward, and you are the point it points to. In practice, you govern through negotiation. The barons and earls and dukes beneath you are not simply subjects. They are men with armies and castles and territories that you do not control directly. They have their own ambitions, their own grievances, their own networks of loyalty and obligation. A king who forgets this, who behaves as though the theoretical hierarchy is the actual one, tends to face consequences. King John of England discovered this at Runnymede in 1215, when his barons made him sign the Magna Carta at sword point, essentially. Not a revolution. They weren't trying to remove him. They were trying to constrain him, to remind him that his power had limits whether he acknowledged them or not. You wage war constantly. The medieval king is primarily a military figure. You lead campaigns, besiege castles, defend your borders, project power into neighboring kingdoms, or fail to. Victory makes you. A great military triumph turns restless barons into loyal ones, fills your treasury with ransom and plunder, silences the men who said you were weak. Defeat does the opposite. You manage your court, a traveling apparatus of hundreds of people that moves around your kingdom constantly, eating through the food stores of each region in turn, administering justice, showing your face. The king who is seen is the king who is real. The king who retreats to one castle and sends orders is a king whose authority becomes abstract and then fragile. You have heirs to think about. A king without a son is a kingdom with a succession crisis waiting to happen. A king with too many sons is a kingdom with a civil war waiting to happen. The correct number of healthy male heirs is 2, ideally, and you will spend enormous political energy on the marriage alliances that get you there. You are surrounded by people who want things from you. Every interaction is a transaction. Every friendship has structure underneath it. Isolation is the private experience of a man who is never technically alone. The crown is heavy, not the physical object, though that too in the ceremonies. The weight is the knowledge that everything below you rests on what you do next. You make decisions that determine whether harvests become famines, become rebellions, whether wars become victories, become eras of peace, or the reverse, whether the men around you remain loyal or decide the cost of loyalty exceeds the cost of treason. You sleep with a guard outside your door. You have slept this way every night of your reign. You will sleep this way until you don't wake up. Rank 9, the Pope. You are not in the secular hierarchy. You are above it. That is the claim, and in the medieval world, the claim has substantial force. The Pope in his full medieval authority, Gregory VII, Innocent III, the great pontiffs of the High Middle Ages, wields a power that no king can fully ignore because it operates in a dimension kings cannot easily reach. You control souls, or the church controls souls, and you control the church, which produces the same practical effect. Excommunication, the severance of a person from the church and therefore from salvation, is a weapon that works on kings precisely because kings believe in damnation. Henry IV of the Holy Roman Empire stood barefoot in the snow at Canossa for 3 days, waiting for Pope Gregory VII to lift his excommunication. The most powerful secular ruler in Europe, humiliated in the cold, because the alternative was losing his crown to barons who would not follow and excommunicate. You appoint bishops. This is where the real machinery of power runs. Bishops control vast territories and revenues across Europe. Whoever controls their appointment controls the church's enormous landholdings, its administrative apparatus, its influence over millions of people's daily lives. The investiture controversy, the century-long fight between popes and Holy Roman emperors over who gets to appoint bishops, is a fight over the most valuable resource in medieval Europe. You know this. The emperors know this. The fight is vicious accordingly. You call crusades. The idea that Christian Europe can be mobilized toward a common military purpose is real, and you are the one person with the moral authority to do it. Urban II called the First Crusade in 1095 with a speech that sent hundreds of thousands of people toward Jerusalem. That is a form of power no king possesses. No king commands armies that aren't his. You can, if the moment is right and the speech is good enough. You are also a political actor in the most conventional sense. The Papal States are your territory. You have armies, advisors, revenues, enemies, and alliances exactly like a secular ruler. The spiritual and temporal dimensions of your power are theoretically separate and practically inseparable, which creates contradictions you manage your entire pontificate. You were elected by the College of Cardinals. The politics of that election were, in certain periods of church history, as complicated and brutal as any royal succession. Families backing candidates, votes bought and promised, the winning cardinal emerging from a conclave that may have lasted years. There were conclaves that lasted so long that the cardinals were locked in and their food rationed to encourage a decision. You are infallible in matters of faith in the emerging doctrine. In matters of judgment, strategy, and character, you are as fallible as any man who ever lived, and the history of the papacy contains enough evidence of this to fill several libraries. You communicate with rulers across the entirety of Christendom. A papal legate arriving at a king's court carries your authority into rooms you will never enter. You are simultaneously local, a bishop in Rome, managing a city and a territory, and universal, the head of an institution that spans a continent. The word pontiff means bridge builder. You are the bridge between the human and the divine, in the theology of your world. Whether or not that is true, enough people act as though it is to make it functionally real. Somewhere in a field, a serf is cutting wheat. He does not know the Pope's name. He knows the priest's name. He does not know the king's policies. He knows the Lord's demands. The grand architecture of the hierarchy above him, the dukes and earls and bishops and pontiffs arguing over precedence and power, arrives in his life as a set of obligations. Pay this, provide that. Go here when summoned. He has never seen a castle from the inside. He has never held a coin worth more than a day's labor. He will be born, work, have children who will work, and die within a radius of 20 miles, and history will not record that he existed. But the wheat he cut fed the knight who rode to war. The war secured the border that the king needed secured. The king's kingdom paid tribute to the power structure the Pope blessed. The whole edifice, every layer of it, every title and ceremony and castle and cathedral, ran on the labor of a man whose name nobody wrote down. That's the medieval hierarchy. Everyone knew their place in it. Almost no one chose it.